Hello, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the southeast. MPs across Kent call for a national public inquiry into how David Fuller was able to abuse at least 100 bodies in hospital mortuaries.
This is beyond the powers and the resources and the scope of a local Kent NHS trust.
The government calls for parents to get their children vaccinated against flu amid fears of a serious epidemic this winter.
Also tonight, the young people doing their bit to help save the planet, why climate change is such an important issue for their future.
And Lewis prepares for its bonfire bonanza. The spectacular procession will light up the streets once again. Good evening to you. MPs across Kent today call for a public inquiry into how double killer David Fuller had access to 2 hospital mortuaries where he abused at least 100 female bodies over 12 years.
The offences which he filmed came to light after the hospital electrician was arrested for the murders of Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce in Tunbridge Wells back in 1987. John Ryle has our report.
How was David Fuller able to abuse at least 100 female corpses over 12 years at 2 hospital mortuaries undetected? A question currently under investigation by the NHS Trust responsible for Tunbridge Wells Hospital and its predecessor, the Kent and Sussex. But the Tunbridge Wells MP, backed by all other Kent MPs, says Fuller's sickening actions and the issues they raise warrant a national public inquiry.
This is beyond the powers and the resources and the scope of a local Kent NHS trust. It raises very important national issues of policy, how we can be sure that mortuaries across the country are defended against this type of predation. And of course the victims need to be able to have their say as well. That requires this to be done properly nationally.
Fuller filmed 100 incidents of abuse between 2008 and 2020. The tapes and hard drives were discovered by police who searched his Heathfield home after his arrest for the historic murders of Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce. 78 of the victims' families have so far been contacted by police, but it's feared there may be many more cases that were not filmed. Kent's elected Police and Crime Commissioner today backed calls for a full-scale public inquiry.
Yes, we're investigating what's happened at one local hospital, but I think there are potentially wider ramifications across the whole of mortuary services in this country to ensure that, firstly, they are secure, they are safe, that people are being treated with dignity and respect.
Many of the abuse victims' families will be referred to the Gravesend-based counselling service Family Matters.
They're going to go through an awful lot of emotions and feelings that they can't sort of process at the moment. It's going to take time.
The body of Azra Kamal, who died falling from a bridge in Kent, was one of those abused by Fuller. A woman's charity is now supporting her family.
The pain at the recent loss of her daughter was very intense for her. To then learn about this additional absolute horror, is just, kind of unbelievable.
Fuller is now awaiting sentence for the murders of Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce in 1987 and the mortuary offences that followed. His depraved crimes will continue to haunt the families of his victims, the police who investigated him, and the jurors in his trial long after the hoped-for public inquiry and long after he has died in prison. John Ryle, ITV News.
Well, a contact centre set up by Kent Police has received 80 calls from members of the public by 8 o'clock this morning. And if you are concerned that you or anyone you know may have been affected by this case, you can go to the Operation Sandpiper Major Incident website. The address is mipp.police.uk, or you can phone 0800 051 5270.
3 weeks since the MP for Southend West was killed, a man has appeared in court today. Sir David Amos was holding his surgery in Leigh-on-Sea when he was stabbed. Ali Harbi Ali, who's 25, is charged with murder and preparing acts of terrorism. He's been remanded in custody to reappear in court next month.
The operator of 4 care homes in Kent has been forced to stop providing regulated care. Inspectors found that residents at Gatehouse and Eastry Villas, run by Optima Care in Sandwich, were allegedly being unlawfully restrained. There were serious concerns too about safety at a home on Spencer Road, which, along with 2 others in Sandwich, has now closed completely. Residents have been moved elsewhere.
Evidence of abuse, people being deprived of their liberty and human rights. It was clear that the homes were not safe. Vulnerable people in these homes were relying on the staff to be their advocates, and this wasn't happening. No one should be treated like that in their own home.
Well, in response, Optima Care told us the services they do still offer are in the advanced stages of improvement, and they're confident the current situation does not reflect what inspectors found during their visit. They say training has been given to prevent future incidents.
French authorities have confirmed a person has died trying to cross the Channel. They were found on a beach near Calais yesterday. 2 other people were found with hypothermia. A person died on Wednesday, also trying to make the dangerous journey.
Now, with the weather getting colder, flu season is sadly upon us. Doctors are urging parents to get their children vaccinated against the virus.
Well, reaction now from Dr. Philippa Kay. Dr. Kay, it's getting colder and the government is worried about a serious flu epidemic this winter, especially amongst children. How worried are you?
I'm actually quite concerned about this winter in comparison to last winter. Last winter, we were all in various stages of tiers and lockdowns. We weren't mixing, and the amount of flu was really low. But this year we are expecting that, as we aren't in restrictions, we're expecting it to be a really difficult flu season. And children actually can become quite unwell with flu. Under 5s are the commonest group to be admitted to hospital with complications of flu. And children are super spreaders of flu, unlike COVID. So it's really important this year that you get your child to have their nasal flu vaccine.
Well, the government's ambition is to immunise 70% of eligible children against flu this year. Now, realistically, can this be achieved?
It absolutely can be achieved. And in last year, it was about 60%. But what that means is that there were approximately 40% of children who weren't vaccinated. And in some areas, actually, it was almost 60% of children that weren't vaccinated. So I think it's really important. It is really achievable because for most children, it's done in school. If you have a child in primary or secondary school up to year 11, all you have to do as a parent is sign the consent form that might be sent to you by email, might be sent in your school bag. And if you have a child that is 2 or 3, then you arrange that through the GP. But it's really easy. And importantly for parents to know, it doesn't involve a needle. It is a nasal spray, a little spray into each nostril, and then you're done.
COVID, of course, still very active. The flu season almost upon us. Without being alarmist, it's important this message gets across.
Absolutely. The combination of COVID and flu has the potential to cause real problems. Both of them are respiratory viruses. They affect the lungs, and it's the combination together that really has the potential to put the NHS under significant pressure after 18 months of a pandemic. And we know that people can get both of those infections together, and if they do, they are more likely to become seriously unwell. Now, common complications of the flu are things like bronchitis, pneumonia, ear infections. These are things that we want to avoid if we can, and we can do that by getting the vaccine.
Dr. Kay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next tonight, scores of people took to the streets of Canterbury last night in a protest calling for more to be done to prevent violence against women and girls. The Reclaim These Streets march set off from outside the Marlow Theatre, with many students from the city's universities among the crowd, as well as some local councillors.
I just personally like every single time I know that I have to walk out somewhere in the dark, or kind of even in the day as well. I just feel so anxious, so worried, and we want more to be done to change that and make people feel safer.
As a woman in general, it's never really safe to go outside at night. No matter what city you're in, I've been spiked myself. Most of my female friends have. And as soon as it happened to me, I just couldn't fathom how scary it was. It was such an awful night. And so it's important to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
Today is Youth and Public Empowerment Day at COP26. Earlier today, around 10,000 people marched through Glasgow in a protest led by Greta Thunberg. Well, so much of what is being talked about at COP26 will impact future generations much harder than our own.
So it's not surprising then that those aged 25 and under should have strong views on environmental issues. Sangeet has been talking to some younger members of our society about their fears and hopes for the future.
This is Dinton Pastures Country Park. Here they've just built a brand new activity centre, which is one of the South East's first net zero carbon buildings. Basically, it means they're doing their little bit to save the planet. The perfect location then to find out what Generation Z think of UN efforts to tackle the climate emergency. Be completely honest then, how much do you think about climate change on a day-to-day basis?
To be honest, I don't think about it every single day when I wake up, but I'm definitely mindful of it, and I try to, cycle to places rather than being driven. So I try and reduce my global footprint and my family's as well.
We think about it quite a lot because it's at the forefront of our lives and we've heard so much about it all the time. There's no planet B, so we need to do something now.
What kind of things do you do on a daily basis?
Me and my sister decided to become vegetarian, which helps reduce the amount of meat intake, so the amount of methane being produced into the atmosphere by cows. I also try to reduce my dairy intake.
Me and my family try not to bulk buy when buying foods, and also if we do have leftover food from meals, we try to preserve them to eat them in the following meals in the following days.
Well, I used to buy a lot from fast fashion brands, and now I try to buy less, and when I do, buying from sustainable brands, because looking into it is such an eye-opener, like the devastating impact fast fashion has, not only on the environment, but also like on local communities that are employed there.
We're not just constantly buying new things that we don't actually need. We think about what impact is this having on my carbon footprint.
Greta Thunberg, she's a young lady like yourselves.
Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises.
She's been very critical about politicians and the global efforts that are being made. What do you think about that?
Well, although there is a huge responsibility on politicians to provide good examples for the public and legislation that will encourage us to make changes, I do think that there's also a lot of responsibility within large companies that are knowingly destroying our planet, and also on individuals to make behavioural changes that will ensure that we have a better future.
There are things that people aren't doing because it's not convenient, and I think we need to start doing that. For example, I have family who lives in different parts of the UK, and all the recycling schemes are so complicated in different areas.
COP26, we've heard so much about it this week. Do we think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to stop an environmental catastrophe?
This won't be a quick fix. It's not going to be this meeting and then that's the end of it. But I think this could be a really good step towards making plans and sticking to them, stopping catastrophe from happening. We can't just stop here. We have to keep that momentum going, keep taking these opportunities and taking little steps in our everyday life to start reducing the effects of climate change.
So can I get a show of hands? How many of you think that we've reached a point of no return? And for those of you that didn't put your hands up, does that mean that you're more optimistic?
I'd like to say so. I think we've still got a bit of time left, and I feel like even if we do start now, we could always make a big impact if we collectively work together.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I think we need to act now, so there is still time, but there's always hope to do something about it, so we should never give up hope.
Hope, that's a good place to end this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's always hope. And you're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. And you can find more on today's top stories on our website. Just go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can always follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. With more details, here's Charlene White.
Coming up, the chair of Yorkshire Cricket resigns over the club's handling of racism allegations. But with more sponsors pulling out and fresh accusations, will it be enough? 4 teenagers are found guilty of murdering 15-year-old Keon Lincoln, and they're told to expect life sentences. And ABBA's new album is released, but will fans be thankful for the music? Join us for those stories and more from 6:30.
We will, thank you. Now, last night, the Daily Mirror Pride of Britain Awards was broadcast here on ITV, and among the amazing people whose remarkable achievements are recognised was the Regional Fundraiser of the Year winner for ITV Meridian East.
Yes, 19-year-old Jeremy Daubeny from Tunbridge Wells cycled across the country in search of the best English breakfast. He wanted to give something back to 2 charities that helped him when he lost both of his parents. We caught up with him on the red carpet.
Oh, it's been absolutely incredible. I couldn't have enjoyed it more. Just a completely unique experience, just surrounded by so many incredible people. I guess it is the turning something negative into something positive, and that's pretty much like the overarching narrative of everyone here, to be honest. Like, people have taken a bad set of cards and turned them into something incredible.
Wow, it was an amazing night. It's bonfire night tonight, and nowhere is it celebrated more than in the town of Lewes in Sussex.
Absolutely right, and the event, like so many others, of course, during the pandemic, was cancelled last year. With more, Carolyn Sim.
Well, there is already a carnival atmosphere here in Lewes. People are expecting great things from the procession through the crowd tonight. And there's going to be the usual political effigies. We've already spotted Matt Hancock here in a passionate embrace in a parody of Rodin's The Kiss. But on a more serious note, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and the bonfire societies are keen to keep the crowds this year to a minimum. Preparing for what is the biggest event of its kind in the country takes time, and Mick Symes has been doing this for years. Tonight, hundreds of people will gather round his society's bonfire to watch the burning of their effigy and the fireworks, of course.
We have Guy Fawkes behind us, and he has 2 syringes to show that he's double jabbed and safe to be out tonight. He's not sitting on gunpowder. They're gunpowder barrels, but they're full of vaccine.
How are you feeling about tonight?
Incredibly excited. We missed it last year. We really did miss it. And it's back. We're back. And that's what matters.
This was 2019, the last time the event was held. Then around 60,000 people crowded into the town's narrow streets. This year, the message is simple. If you're not local, please stay away.
It's the infrastructure, it simply isn't here for the number of people that we know have attended historically, which is why we put in place a range of measures to limit the number of people who can come to the town to make sure the event is as safe as it possibly can be.
That includes a lockdown of roads and rail until early tomorrow morning, and a request that people wear masks and take lateral flow tests before heading out. What they don't want here is a spike in COVID cases in 2 weeks' time.
Events like this are allowed to take place, but what we're wanting is people to take some simple steps to protect themselves and protect others around them.
For Lewes's 7 bonfire societies, it's a significant celebration steeped in tradition, one they hope the town will enjoy for many years to come. Carolyn Sim, ITV News. Well, Well, here I am with Tim and Anna, who are getting ready for tonight, and they very much do want to keep the numbers to a minimum. One Bonfire Society told me today they've reduced their ticket sales down to 500 from the usual 1,500. And as they say every year, this really is an event for Lewis people, organised by Lewis people. One woman even told me it's really part of their community and it's a bit like Christmas. So they very much hope that tonight's event will go as smoothly as possible.
I'm sure it will. It's always spectacular, isn't it? But what's the weather going to be like for it? Holly's here. Holly, how's it going to be?
Do you know, it should be fine, actually. I think it'll stay dry for the most part, light winds. Yeah, not too bad at all. Bit more detail in the forecast.
Now, we had our special COP26 programme on Tuesday. We're about halfway through the conference now. Sum up for us, will you, Holly, what's been happening?
Yeah, no problem at all. So governments are still a long way from hitting the target of keeping warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. We're currently at 1.1 degrees. So still a long way from that, but some really positive things coming out. So let's take a little look at some of them. There's been a pact from dozens of countries to cut methane emissions by 30% by 2030. Now, this is a big one because we don't hear so much about methane, do we? But it's an incredibly powerful greenhouse gas. It doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long. It's only about 12 years, but it's about 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide in terms of warming. Deforestation. So more than 100 countries have come together to reverse deforestation by 2030. Now, last year we lost around 100,000 square miles of forest across the world. So this is a big one. That's more than the whole area of the UK. And in terms of money, that's obviously been a big discussion point, but 450 organisations that control around 2/5 of the world's financial assets have signed up to supporting clean energy. So some really, really positive things coming out of the conference.
Weekend fast approaching, not looking too bad?
It's all right. It could be better. Breezy, the wind's quite strong at times, cloudy, but mild generally.
But nothing could be better than this forecast from Holly Green.
So decent conditions this evening for any firework displays. I think it is quite chilly. We've got some starry skies, so temperatures taking a bit of a tumble, but a lot of dry weather around. I think the vast majority staying dry, just a very, very small chance of a shower perhaps into the south coast, say, but the majority will be dry. And the winds shouldn't be an issue either. So high pressure keeping things settled. We have got increasingly mild air feeding around the top of this high. And then this feature, this weather front goes through overnight Saturday into Sunday. That does introduce some colder air, I think, on Sunday. Still quite a bit of cloud. And you can see quite a squeeze there in the isobars too. I think the winds will strengthen through the course of Saturday and will be quite strong on Sunday before maybe easing down later. Out there at the moment then, well, some starry skies, a bit of cloud pushing its way in, as I say, feeling a bit on the chilly side. Maybe an isolated shower into the coast, but the majority of us do stay dry through the night tonight. A couple of misty patches a possibility, and quite a bit milder than the night just gone. Of course, many of us woke to a frosty start this morning. Into tomorrow then, well, quite a bit more cloud around than today. That cloud could get thick enough to bring a couple of showers here and there, but I think a lot of the day largely dry. The wind, though, strengthening as the day goes on. We start to see gusts getting up to 30 or 35 miles an hour. But it is mild, so despite the breezy wind, despite the cloud, we are looking at temperatures there getting up to, well, the teens for many, 13 or 14 Celsius. And that's just because the air is inherently pretty mild. Our times of high water, we've got Dover at 11:27 and again at 11:51 as we head into the evening. And finally, the outlook. Well, I think on Sunday it will be quite windy, fairly cloudy skies, and those temperatures take a little bit of a drop too. Perhaps a better chance of some brighter weather into Monday and then turning that bit milder for Tuesday. Have a good evening.
Time now for a quick look ahead to the final episode of the current series of All Around Britain, which is on slightly earlier tomorrow at 12:35.
With all the details, here's Alex Beresford and Ria Hebden.
Tomorrow on All Around Britain, it's our last programme of the year, and we are here at the Eden Project in Cornwall.
We're exploring these famous biomes and discovering some of the thousands of exotic plants from rainforests all over the world.
This giant palm, it's an endangered palm.
And we'll be heading to new heights to help keep these extraordinary bubble-like windows spotless.
Also on the show this week,
the children from Yorkshire and Lincolnshire enjoying VIP access with the world-famous Red Arrows.
That was awesome.
we meet the woman from Cumbria who's been chosen to illustrate one of the most famous American novels of the 20th century.
Totally flabbergasted. It was kind of like winning the lottery. It was crazy.
Plus the theatre performer from Cardiff, who's hoping his show will help to challenge stereotypes around being deaf.
We're on a day earlier this week, so join us tomorrow at 12:35 on ITV.
For another trip all around Britain.
Well, don't miss that, or the ITV Evening News coming up next with Charlene White.
Stacey's got our late news tonight about 10:50. Bulletins throughout the weekend here on ITV Meridian. And from the whole team here, thank you for watching. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Take care.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.